Hello and welcome back. If you're just tuning in to this video series, I highly recommend you watch parts 1, 2, and 3, where I walk you through what Kitty Items is, what the heck are you even watching? I walk you through how to get all of the required dependencies installed and how to get it running on testnet, which is where we just left off. In this video, we're going to see how to use the local emulator to make some changes and iterate quickly, and then we'll redeploy it to testnet in the next video. In this video, we're also going to not just port it to the emulator, but also make some changes to the web app, to the backend, and to the Cadence contract to make sure that we add a new NFT to our marketplace and our storefront. Awesome. So we were here. Now we're going to go to this step, which is to add the fantastic shades to our collection. Awesome. So how do we do that? Well, first, let's port our local host experience to the emulator. Porting it to the emulator will mean that we will not be using testnet, right? We're going to be emulating the full blockchain on our computer. So it's not connecting to any remote service. It's running locally. And rather than Blockto, which is a remote service that's running on testnet and mainnet, we are going to be using the FCL flow client library dev wallet. So everything is self-contained and it will allow us to make changes quickly to our code, run transactions almost instantly, and just in general, have a much better developer experience. And once we're ready, then we can deploy to testnet and try it out on the live network before, eventually deploying it to mainnet if we were developing our own app. So how complicated is it to get the emulator running with Kitty Items? Well, again, just like it was with testnet, it's really only one line. Sorry to disappoint you if you were hoping for a lot of complicated steps. But we will now run the emulator. The cool thing about these processes is they are perfectly sequential. So if you initially started on testnet, you can run the emulator command and it'll take care of clearing out the old settings, stopping the old processes, and restarting the processes that are required for that specific environment. In our case, it stopped all of the testnet environments, right? So like it stopped our connection to testnet, stopped our API and front end. It launched the emulator. So now we are running our own little version of testnet, right? Called the emulator. It started the dev wallet, which is the local dev version of, let's say, Blockto, which we were using. It deployed the contracts to our local emulator account. It already created an admin account because again, it's happening through the emulator. So it's super instant. It initialized the admin transactions like it did on testnet. It started the API server and it started the web app. Is that enough? Are you not entertained? So let's open up localhost 3001. If you get an error here, like a big red error, it's probably because you're still logged into the old testnet web app and it's trying to connect to the API of the emulator with your logged in testnet account. And there's going to be a mismatch because the testnet account only lives on testnet and the emulator account only lives on your local emulator. So make sure that you either close the tab, open a new one. The usual way to fix it is just to refresh the page and log out of whatever you're logged into. And here we are back to an empty Kitty Items because again, this is running on our local emulator. So it has none of the testnet data. And we can, of course, like we did in testnet, mint some items, right? And you'll see that transaction end instantly, thanks to the fact that it's running on the emulator and you're already seeing the advantages of running on the emulator. And if we log in, rather than the Blockto flow, here we have the FCL dev wallet flow, where we have two default accounts, the service account, which has all of the flow, right? And we have the account A, which is our first actual, let's say, usable account that unfortunately only has 0.001 flow, which is the minimum amount required to create an account. So we can go to manage and add some flow to this poor person and use that as the account that we log in with, right? So when we actually go to the store and we see the blue milkshake that we just minted using the admin account a second ago, we can click on purchase and again, This is the dev wallet equivalent of the Blockto flow. Click on approve and boom, this is our blue milkshake now. We don't look terribly happy in this randomly generated avatar, but I think it's like maybe he has a love-hate relationship with ice cream, right? Like he loves it, but he knows that it's gonna, yeah, it's a lot of calories. I don't know. But we have this blue milkshake and it's ours. And you see, we also got one flow less because the blue rarity sells for one flow. Awesome. So now we have everything running on the emulator. What we want to do now is adding a new NFT collection, these awesome shades. So how do we do that? We have everything running on the emulator. Now we need to make some changes. We have to make some changes in the backend. We have to make some changes in the web application, and we have to make some changes on the Cadence contracts side as well. So the first thing that we need to do is update the backend API to have this shades kind. So we go to API, source, services, KD items. So API, source, services, KD items. And here where we see skateboard, we're going to replace this with shades. Awesome. Let's save that. Always remember to save because I always forget and I always wonder why things are not working. Then we want to update the web application. So we want to go to, let's copy this again. We want to go to web source global constants. So let's close up the API and go to web source global constants. And here's where we want to update this map to include shades, right? We're adding this new shades NFT collection. Next step that we want to do, and by the way, one thing that it's worth mentioning, if you're using VS Code and you don't have this installed yet, I highly recommend you install the VS Code extension for Cadence. So either you do it through the plugin repository of VS Code itself, just look for Cadence and install it, or you use the Flow CLI to do Flow Cadence install VS Code extension. These two will have the equivalent effect. Highly recommend it. It'll give you syntax highlighting. It'll give you code completion. It'll give you everything you need to develop Cadence effectively. Awesome. So we added the kind to our API, so it knows that shades exist. We added it to our constants on the front end, so we know that shades exist. Now we need to update the Cadence smart contract. So first we need to add a new kind. So we'll close up web, go to Cadence, and go to contracts and go to KD items. Okay. Now we need to update where we outline what types exist, right? I'm just going to re-indent it. So now we added a pub case shades. Again, save. I was about to forget. Then we also need to update the kind to string method. So this is where when we do have the shades kind, how do we render that to an actual string? And in this case, it's shades with a capital S. And so we will add this, we will replace this kind to string method right here, which includes shades. You don't have to copy and paste the whole code. I just find it's easier so that we're less likely to make mistakes. But you see, the only thing that changes is actually only these two lines. And then we need to create a transaction to get the shades images in the contract and update it. Now, the reason we need to do that is because in our init function, we outline here in our init function, while we go down, you see how we also declare images. So we have fishbowl, fish hat, milkshake, tuk-tuk, skateboard. The reason we can't add it here, we can't add kind.shades and add the IPFS links to the images for the various rarities, is because the init function does not run when a contract is updated. It only runs when a contract is deployed the first time. So in order to get those images updated, we're going to have to run a transaction to manually set them. Okay. And that's what we're going to do now. So we are going to first create that transaction and save it to a file. So as we do here in the root directory, we're just going to touch this file and Cadence transactions, KD items, add NFT images. So let's just do that real quick. Let me move my face. Boom. Now we have this new file in transactions, kitty items, boom, add NFT images for new kind, and it's empty, right? Because we just, this touch command just creates a blank file. And we're gonna copy the contents of this next section and paste it in here. Let me walk you through what's happening. We are running a transaction, right? And what we're doing is we are updating the kitty items kind properties for the shades. And we're doing that using the minter function called add new images for kind. So we added this because we knew that we were going to be adding a new kind and new images for that kind. So we're going to use this method, right? Which is defined in the kitty items contract here. And what it does, it just updates the properties of the images and inserts the ones for the kind that we're trying to add. Again, so since we can't rerun the init function, we're using a transaction to manually update the properties that are defined in the kitty items contract using this special method that we created exactly for this reason. Awesome. So let's save that. We are ready to update the emulator. So how do we update the emulator? We just run this command, npm run update emulator. Boom. We updated the contracts that we updated the kitty items contract, right? And then now it's redeployed. When we rerun testnet, all of our backend and front end changes will also be reflected. And now all of these contracts are redeployed, so updated. And now we need to run the transaction to actually update, to actually run this, to actually update the images property here that we set when we start the function, right? Self.images, we need to run the transaction. So this gets added with kind.shades and the various rarities and the IPFS hashes. And the way that we do that is we copy this transaction, which is already copied, and I'll walk you through what this contains. So flow transactions send, this is the flow CLI command to send a transaction. The link to our transaction code, which is this one here, right? That we just copied and pasted. And the network, which is emulator. So let's run that. Boom, sealed. If you see sealed, all's good. We did everything correctly. And we are ready to, see our sunglasses in action. So we should be able to just refresh this page. So let's go to admin. Let's go to kitty items. Let's mint an item. Let's mint another item. Yeah, see, we have the shades happening here as well. So if we try again, if we keep trying to mint items, we should be getting, it's a purple fish hat. We should get, oh, look at that, purple shades, 20% rarity, awesome. We have purple shades and we added that to the contracts and they're worth 25 testnet flow. That's worth a lot of money and they look pretty awesome. I wish I had them in real life. So what we did, just to summarize, we added a new NFT type, which are the shades. We added the concept of shades in the front end and back end, as well as in our Cadence contracts. But in order to make sure that we had the image metadata, we just needed to run a quick transaction to manually set it because that metadata is set in the init function of the contract, and the init function of the contract is only run once when it's deployed, not when it's updated. So if all of that makes sense, we are done with modifying our kitty items contract, and we are ready to take all of what we've done on the emulator and redeploy this to testnet. And kind of complete the whole flow. So see you in the next video, and thanks for sticking around.